Is your chance to be able to buy one whole Bitcoin running out? Yes. Yes, it is. At least at a reasonable price anyway. Of course, for many people, buying one whole Bitcoin already seems pretty gosh darn ridiculous, and it's only going to get more and more out of reach as time goes on. When Bitcoin is $100,000 plus, then buying one Bitcoin, that will become the privilege of the rich alone. Everyone else will just be scrambling around trying to buy tiny little fractions of Bitcoin, and for a lot of people, that's already the case. This video is going to lay out why the coming months may be your last chance to buy one Bitcoin at a reasonable price. Because this is the CryptoLark channel. This is where you subscribe for awesome crypto info and insights. By the way, if you are looking for a way to trade on the long-term price of Bitcoin, then check out Bybit. There is a link down below where you can get signed up and get up to a $90 trading bonus. And as a special limited time offer, Bybit is giving a $300 trading bonus if you deposit one Bitcoin before February 4th. Terms and conditions, of course, apply. So let's get into the many reasons why I believe that the ability to buy one whole Bitcoin at reasonable human prices is quickly running out. First, let's have a look at some key metrics, and let's start off with the Bitcoin hodlers. The people who own Bitcoin and are in this for the long run are currently at a very high level. Right now, there are around 12.5 million Bitcoin that have not moved in more than a year. Now, yes, inevitably, some of that Bitcoin is just lost forever beneath the waves of time. But a huge portion of that Bitcoin, long-term holders, people who have zero intention of selling their Bitcoin anytime soon, if selling their Bitcoin at all. These people are in for the long-term play. They're looking 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. So that really means there's only around 33% of the current mine supply which is available on the open markets for people to go out and buy. Just think about how crazy that is for a second. These numbers also complement the total on-chain ownership statistics. The number of addresses owning one Bitcoin or more is up nearly 11% since last year. That's from a total of 707,000 up to 784,000. Now, sure, of course, some of those will be people using multiple addresses. One guy's got 10 Bitcoin and 10 addresses, each with one Bitcoin. That's going to happen. But it will also undoubtedly be new buyers coming in and accumulating, getting just one or just two Bitcoin. This number, by the way, has more than doubled since early 2015. And when we look at the number of addresses with balances between 0.1 Bitcoin and 1 Bitcoin, this has also risen significantly by 10% year over year. The total number of Bitcoin addresses holding more than 0 Bitcoin, so with a positive balance, is closing in on 29 million addresses. Just stop there for a second. Think about that. There is not enough Bitcoin that will ever be in existence, not counting for all the lost Bitcoin, just the total supply for everyone with an address that currently has a positive Bitcoin balance. Not all those people can own one Bitcoin. That's scarcity. And on that topic, there is also not enough Bitcoin for each Coinbase user to have one Bitcoin, and certainly not for each Fidelity customer to have one Bitcoin, let alone when you factor in both of those massive institutions and everything else. It's crazy. One Bitcoin could be life-changing for people. Then, of course, the Bitcoin hash rate just keeps on rising, meaning that more and more money is continually being invested into Bitcoin. The expectation on return for that invested money is certainly high. And the network is more secure than it has ever been, and it is growing more secure all of the time. In fact, some of the biggest companies and biggest investors in the world are putting a lot of money into Bitcoin mining.
Fidelity, which has actually been mining Bitcoin for many years, is looking to up its mining game big time. We have Japanese giants SBI Holdings and GMO Internet. They have both made a big play on Bitcoin mining in Texas. And Peter Thiel, he's also backing a Texas Bitcoin mining farm. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the stories we've seen over the last year about money being invested into Bitcoin mining. Then, of course, if we're talking about mining, we have got to talk about the Bitcoin halving, which is coming and getting closer by the day. And while the day itself may be something of a non-event, it's the days and weeks and months after the halving that are really going to matter. That 50% reduction in daily emission, come on, that is going to add up big time. The current emission for Bitcoin is around 1,800 Bitcoin a day. After the halving, that's going to be around 900 Bitcoin a day. So 900 less Bitcoin a day hitting the markets for the next 4 years. This is happening at the exact time when demand for Bitcoin is steadily increasing. Available Bitcoin to buy on the market will become less because the miners will have less to sell. This will not only, of course, lower the sell pressure from the miners, but also likely send the price of Bitcoin parabolic as new buyers pile in the coming bull run. Bitcoin has been in a heavy reaccumulation stage for about the last year now, and this stage, for all intents and purposes, is largely coming to an end. We all know the market moves in cycles, and this cycle is about to give way to a big bull cycle. Now, it might take another year for things to really heat up big time, but make no mistake, this is where the trend is moving. We have seen multiple boom and bust cycles for Bitcoin before. They come, they go, but now we have the boom time coming again. Then there is the big money, specifically the big money which is coming into Bitcoin right now. We can see that money inflow coming from institutional investors into things like the Grayscale Investment Trust, which in 2019 saw a crazy amount of money flowing into just that one trust. So the big money is here, and that big money is definitely seeking direct exposure to Bitcoin. Time has shown that even a small percentage of Bitcoin in a portfolio as a hedge has generated huge returns for investors. This knowledge is starting to spread, and people are taking note. And then, of course, we can never forget about the macroeconomic meltdown dysfunction that we see happening, because that is all still very, very much in play. The Fed repo market, that continues to be an open wound on Wall Street, which all the money in the world apparently can't stop the bleeding of. Central banks just keep on printing money like it's going out of fashion or something, because it is going out of fashion. That's why. Anyway, major commercial banks are, well, at least some of the major commercial banks are a little more than zombie banks at this point, so that means they're kind of functionally insolvent, but still alive, propped up by this free central bank money, which just keeps delaying the inevitable collapse of these cancerous giants, which is another big problem of itself because the other healthier banks are deeply exposed to these sick banks. The stock markets are also super overinflated, again afflicted by the sickness of free money being handed to the big banks. Negative rates continue to be passed on to savers the world over, meaning that you are being punished for saving fiat in bank accounts in an increasing amount of countries. And the fiat myth itself, it continues to be exposed for the exact kind of fraud that it is, with catastrophic fiat failure in countries like Argentina, very darkly underlining that no one in fiat is truly safe. And all of this dysfunction really kind of bodes well for Bitcoin as a safe haven asset and as a hedge against all of that dysfunctional insanity. And really as an asset that allows people the world over to just kind of sidestep those draconian capital control laws that we have seen put in place in so many countries, and of course the cash bans and all that craziness as well. Then, of course, we must also consider that the technology behind Bitcoin is getting better all of the time. While the Lightning Network remains really very young technology at this stage, there is certainly a flurry of building happening around the Lightning Network, trying to make the Lightning Network better than it is. You have multiple projects that are now being built on top of the Lightning Network. We have a major exchange, Bitfinex, now accepting Lightning deposits. And of course, perhaps the biggest Bitcoin Lightning Network related story that we've seen recently is that Jack Dorsey's Square crypto division released a comprehensive toolkit which will allow for developers to be able to build like crazy on top of the Lightning Network. This one move alone, I think, will really push forward a lot of new innovation on the Lightning Network. And as far as the core layer of Bitcoin is concerned, important upgrades coming for Bitcoin, like things like Schnorr signatures and Taproot. These are going to come online, and when they do, they're going to bring in more efficiency and more functionality to Bitcoin. Now, in terms of Bitcoin's awareness factor, its media attention factor, it's getting a lot of mainstream acceptance. We see people like Elon Musk and Stephen Colbert frequently mentioning Bitcoin, and often in relatively good terms. Not always. Media's got the media thing that it does, but still, Bitcoin has entered the mainstream consciousness in a very serious way. And when the media frenzy starts again over the price, and it will, it's inevitable, then you know that all the tourists are going to start showing up again. But this time, they're going to come in much larger numbers than they did last time. We also have an ever-increasing number of ways for people to be able to spend their Bitcoin, not to mention the myriad of ways they can buy it. Now, the ability for people to be able to spend their crypto, that should hopefully drive some actual retail spending of crypto when the market pops again, especially things like the payment processing services from Bakkt, which is working, of course, very famously with big brands like Starbucks, but also other important stories that get a lot less press than kind of the Wall Street stuff from Bakkt. Stories like this one out of Brazil, that there are now millions of point-of-sale terminals in Brazil where you can pay using Bitcoin. Then, of course, you have the addition of Bitcoin wallets into the new generation of Samsung phones and of the new generation of HTC phones as well. You start to understand how it's all coming together. And look, nobody can see the future, okay? Personally, after making a video like this, I just feel like I want to go and buy more Bitcoin. But that's just me, I suppose. The fundamentals of Bitcoin do remain very strong, of course, and as the next cycle starts to pick up steam, you know that it's going to become a near impossibility for regular people to be able to buy one whole Bitcoin. And when I say regular people, I'm really talking about regular investors here, because let's keep it real, most of the population is living paycheck to paycheck and can barely afford to pay their bills, let alone to buy Bitcoin. But there's enough investors out there that things are going to go crazy when we start to pop again. But buying and owning one Bitcoin, for your average investor, even people who do invest, right? That's going to be the stuff of fantasy and the stuff of legend in the coming years. And no longer will the conversation be about getting one Bitcoin. That won't be the goal anymore. It'll be about getting 0.1 Bitcoin. By the end of the decade, we're probably talking about getting 0.01 Bitcoin. Stack, sats, and chill, my friends. Bitcoin is a game of the slow, steady survivors. Now, my final thought here before I finish the video is the stock to flow chart for Bitcoin. And this has proven to be a very accurate indicator for the price trends of Bitcoin over time. Now, according to the stock to flow model, we could see Bitcoin reach as much as $100,000 a coin as soon as the end of 2021, which, by the way, largely coincides with historic post-halving bull run trajectories that see the new all-time high happening 12 to 18 months after a halving event. Bitcoin, it's going to $100,000. I truly believe that, and probably a lot more in the long run. The only question is when Bitcoin gets to $100,000. Anyway, those are just my 2 Satoshis. As always, I would love to hear your opinion. Do you think that we are on the verge of regular
people never being able to own one whole Bitcoin? Let me know down below in the comments section. As always, thank you so much for watching today's video. I super appreciate your time, and just thank you for letting me be able to make videos and to talk about crypto on the internet. It's amazing, and you're amazing, so thank you so much. And if you did enjoy the video, hit the thumbs up button, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Long live the blockchain, and peace out till next time.